So coming to the end of this section, we're now going to move away from maps and location and towards audio. Specifically, we're going to see how we can include an MP3 file in our app and control its playback. So let's start, as usual, with a new project. I'll call it Audio Player. Save it on the desktop. And while that's setting up, of course, to play an MP3, we'll need an MP3 to play. So feel free to use any MP3 you like, but if you don't have any hanging around, I'd recommend going to pianosociety.com, and I'm going to use composers and then Johann Sebastian Bach. And then at the bottom of the description, you'll find various recordings. I'll go for a cantata. And this one here. And clicking on that will take you to the MP3 page. And you can just go to File, Save Page As. And I will just make that a little bit easier to type. Change it to sheep.mp3. Wonderful. So back over to our app and then over to Finder to grab the file that we just downloaded and drag it into our app. And I would definitely copy the item in, and there we go. So to play an audio file in iOS is reasonably straightforward. We need to import a new framework, and that is AV Foundation, Audio Visual Foundation. And then, just like with the timer or location manager, we create a player, which is an AV audio player. And then we use that to control our audio. So I'll play it straight off in the viewDidLoad method. And we'll start by creating what's known as an audio path. So essentially a path to the MP3 file. And it's slightly more complicated than you might think. But we start with what's known as the bundle, which is where you go to access the files within your app. Then we go to the main area of the bundle and the path for resource. And then we just need to enter the name, so sheep, and the type, which is MP3. Now there are, of course, lots of potential problems with this. I could mistype the file name, or it could not be an MP3 file, or it might be corrupt or something like that. So we're going to meet a new Swift construction known as do, try, catch, which we'll be seeing a few times in the rest of the course. It's a great way of doing something that you think may possibly crash. And it works like this. So we start with the do keyword. Then we say we're going to try to set up our player, which we do using player equals AV audio player. And we're going to play the contents of URL. The URL in this case is just a file path. And to create the URL, we'll use URL, and it's a file URL with path, and the path is audio path. And we do need to force unwrap audio path there too. And then we add a catch, which is where we'll process any errors. So essentially this is much like the if-let setup, but instead of testing whether a variable exists or can be converted, we're testing a whole command. So in this case, setting up the audio player. And then once that's done, we just do player play, and that will play the audio for us. Let's give it a listen. And there we go. That's playing in the background. I'm not sure if you can hear it, but we've definitely got our audio player going there. Alright, so now that we've got the player up and running, let's just add a little bit of control and see how we can do things like change volume, play, and pause. So we'll do this via buttons, and we'll have a play, pause, and we'll also have a volume control slider. Alright, so let's see how we connect all of those up. We'll select actions for all three. So play, control drag, of course, to set up these outlets. And then for the slider, we'll need both an action, which will be slider moved, and an outlet, which will just be the slider, which we'll use to get the slider value. Okay. So now back over to viewcontroller.swift, and we'll set up the player in viewDidLoad, which means all we need to do for the play button is move the play command over to the play method when that button is pressed. The pause command, you can probably work out, it's just player.pause, and then here all we need to do is set the player volume, and the volume runs from 0 to 1, as does the slider values, so we can just use slider.value and put those equal to each other, and that's it. So let's take a look and just hear this in action. And here we go. So clicking play. There you go. I hope you can hear that. It's not very clear. I think we've got a bit of a delay, but it is playing through. And then we can obviously pause to stop the process and play to bring it back again. Here we go. And we can adjust the volume with the slider. You're not sounding good at all there, unfortunately, but you get the idea. And then we can slide it down and have it very quiet. There you go. So you can probably just about hear it in the background now. Right, I will stop that. And that's more or less all there is to it. You can see how we set up an audio path, create the player, and then control it via buttons. In the next video then, we're going to make a quick app out of this, partly to remind ourselves how to create good looking interfaces using navigation bars and toolbars.